Greetings everyone. So I thought I would cover this with you, even though it isn't generally the kind of thing I like to talk about. Not because I'm trying to bury my head in the sand and pretend that these kind of things may not be going on in the Vatican, because I'm well aware that there are probably some dodgy people in the Vatican, quite possibly some infiltrators in the Vatican who are doing evil things. Um, Despite that, the church will win and it won't fall and it will never teach heresy because that's something that's been promised to us by Christ. But that doesn't mean there won't be dodgy people in the Vatican who may try to do some very dodgy things. And when I actually saw this article on the Catholic News Agency, I did think it could be an April Fool's joke because it was on the 1st of April that it was published. And news websites do sometimes do that. Even the BBC, they'll put something up and it was a joke for April Fools, and then later on they'll ask their readers if they noticed the false or the fake articles that they put up on purpose, and then they'll take them down. But this wasn't taken down, and so it was obviously real. And essentially, it's Pope Francis himself admitting that there was a group of cardinals in the Vatican who did not want Pope Benedict to become Pope Benedict, or should I say they did not want Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger at the time to become Pope Benedict. And he says they tried to use him essentially to get people to vote for him so that it would take votes away from Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, and that would prevent him from becoming the Pope. So let's have a look at this article, because it is, I know that people have spoken about this, but I don't recall Pope Francis ever mentioning it. So this could well be the first time that he's mentioned it, and that will be in his book that was just recently released. So let's have a look at what the Catholic News Agency writes up. So the headline is, I was used against Ratzinger in 2005 conclave, but he was my candidate, from Pope Francis there. Pope Francis said he was used in the 2005 conclave in an effort to block the election of Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, though he supported the candidacy of the man who soon became Pope Benedict XVI. He was my candidate, Francis said of his predecessor in excerpts from the forthcoming book, or it's actually already been released now, The Successor, published by the Spanish newspaper ABC on Easter Sunday. In the book, Pope Francis told Spanish journalist Javier Martinez Brocal that his name, then Cardinal Jose Mario Bergoglio of Buenos Aires, was put forward as part of a complete maneuver by an unnamed group of cardinals to manipulate the conclave's outcome. The idea was to block the election of Ratzinger, he explained. They were using me, but behind them they were already thinking about proposing another cardinal. They still couldn't agree on who, but they were already on the verge of throwing out a name. So much for the whole, let's listen to what the Holy Spirit has to say and choose the correct candidate according to what God wishes. There were just a group of cardinals who didn't want a certain cardinal to become pope and wanted to get someone else in instead of him. And from what Pope Francis is saying, they didn't necessarily want him to become the Pope, but they wanted him to be put forward as someone who would get enough votes to prevent Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger from becoming Pope. Francis said that at one point of the conclave that began on April 18th, 2005, he was receiving 40 of the 115 total votes. If cardinals continued to support him, Ratzinger would not have reached the necessary two-thirds threshold to be elected, likely prompting a search for an alternative candidate. Francis said that he realized the operation was afoot on the second day of voting and told the Colombian Cardinal Dario Castrillon to not joke with my candidacy and cease supporting him because I'm not going to accept being elected. Austin Ivory, the Pope's English-speaking biographer, has previously written that Bergoglio, almost in tears, had begged not to be elected. So he did become Pope later on, so he obviously didn't have that much of an issue with being elected, but perhaps at that time he didn't want to be. Ratzinger, who had been the long-time prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith under John Paul II, was elected that same day. Pope Francis did not say who this group of conclave manipulators consisted of, nor who they planned to introduce as a third candidate. But the Argentinian prelate said that the group of cardinals did not want a foreign pope. Several accounts from the time have claimed that a group of liberal European cardinals known as the St. Gallen Group attempted to manipulate the outcome of the 2005 conclave. Just keep in mind, this is now the Catholic news agency writing this. I'm not saying it isn't true, but this isn't something that Pope Francis is admitting to. He's not saying that there is a St. Gallen Group who have tried to manipulate this. He just said there were people, cardinals in the Vatican who wanted to manipulate it. And it could well be the St. Gallen Group, the same people. 3 members of the group, German Cardinals Walter Kasper and Karl Lehmann, and Belgian Cardinal Gottfried Daniels, also participated in the 2013 conclave that elected Francis. According to Ivory, they advocated for Bergoglio after first securing his assent, a claim the cardinals had denied. Now, if those cardinals were involved, it would be weird that they wouldn't want a foreign pope. It'd be weird that that would be the reason they didn't want Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, because he was German. And it seems 2 of these guys are German and 1 of them's Belgian. But they desperately wanted an Italian pope. And they wanted to use an Argentinian cardinal to prevent that. It's all a bit odd. It doesn't sound like the problem was that they wanted an Italian pope. If it was those guys who were the most heavily involved in this whole manipulation. According to Universi Dominici Gregis, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, an apostolic constitution governing papal conclaves, cardinal electors must refrain from any form of pact, agreement, promise, or other commitment of any kind that could oblige them to give or deny their vote to a person or persons under threat of automatic excommunication. So if it had been officially found out that this is what happened, and again I'm not saying it didn't, but if it was official that this is what happened, these guys should have been excommunicated. At the very least, these guys. And there may well have been more who were involved, who should also have been excommunicated. Conclave proceedings are by definition secretive, as the term is derived from a Latin word that means a locked room. But in the successor, Francis said that while cardinals are sworn to secrecy regarding conclave proceedings, the popes have license to tell it. Pope Francis also revealed that while others were putting his name forward in the hopes of forcing a stalemate, he believed Ratzinger was the only one at the time who could be pope. After the revolution of John Paul II, who had been a dynamic pontiff, very active, with initiative, who travelled, there was a need for a pope who maintained a healthy balance. A transitional pope, the Holy Father said of his predecessor, who served from 2005 to 2013. Francis also said that he left Rome happy that Ratzinger had been elected and not himself. If they had chosen someone like me, who makes a lot of trouble, I wouldn't have been able to do anything, he said. At that time, it would not have been possible. That is important, rather key. First of all, he's calling himself someone who makes a lot of trouble. And then he's saying if he was elected right after John Paul II, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. He felt there was a need for a transitionary pope rather than to go straight into someone like him who may shock the Catholic faithful a little bit too much. And this is also important, the ending of this article. Nonetheless, Pope Francis added that the papacy wasn't easy for Benedict XVI, who encountered a lot of resistance within the Vatican. That's Pope Francis actually saying that in his book. So, as we know, Pope Benedict resigned from the papacy, and the official reason given was that he was basically too sick to carry on. But Pope Francis here is saying that there was a lot of resistance within the Vatican to Pope Benedict. So there were quite a few in the Vatican who did not like him. Now, it's generally believed that he didn't want to be the Pope anyway, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, but then when he was the Pope, if there was strong resistance against him in the Vatican, that wouldn't have helped, considering he already kind of didn't want it anyway. And then, of course, there have also been other suggestions that there were certain things going on in the Vatican that when he found out about them, he just couldn't take it. Like, he couldn't believe some of the things that were happening. But that's all hearsay. The reason I think this is an important article is because it's giving some quotes from Pope Francis's book, where he basically admits that there was a movement to try to prevent Joseph Ratzinger, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, from becoming the Pope. Now, of course, these are just quotes, so I haven't read the book, and it would probably help to read the book to see it in full context, but nevertheless, it is disturbing to see that this is something that's officially been admitted by the Pope, that it goes on. And I know that there are some Catholics who believe this to have been going on anyway, so it doesn't surprise them at all. But now it seems we have confirmation that this kind of thing's going on, unless, of course, people wish to not believe Pope Francis and think he's just made this up. But then that would raise the question, why would he bother saying something like this? Why would the Pope say that there have been dodgy things going on in the Vatican? So yeah, that is, it's quite a shocker. And as I said, I thought this might be a joke at first, not because I didn't think it was possible that something like this could have happened, but just because I didn't think Pope Francis would say that something like this had happened. And yet he has. We shouldn't be horrified at the fact that there are some dodgy players within the Vatican, because this is how the devil is trying to destroy the church. He couldn't do it from the outside, because every time he tried, the church would just rebuild on the blood of the martyrs and become even stronger. So then the only way to do it was to do it from the inside, much like some of the ideologies today that are happening in the world. They are doing it from the inside, quietly, education system, the media, etc. They're not making it obvious, like the kind of aggressive communism that we had before. They're just sort of basically teaching people that this is normal. And so this is what the devil's trying to do. He's trying to do it from the inside. And so something like this shouldn't surprise us, but we can also take heart in knowing that he won't be able to destroy the church. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I do love to read them. And thank you very much for watching. God bless.